Ever feel like your best ideas vanish into thin air? Or that your team's potential is untapped? This week on Honeypot Podcast, Alexander and Fredrik dive deep into the crucial first step of innovation, collection. They're breaking down how to gather those golden nuggets of insight, from crafting the right questions to engaging diverse perspectives. Get ready to transform your approach to brainstorming and unlock the power of collective intelligence. It all starts now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Honeypot Podcast. My name is Alexander Wennerberg and I'm here with the always so brilliant
Fredrik Heghammar.
Yes,
Yeah.
we've been off for a few weeks. It's been a lot of work to do, a very interesting event, and actually we're both coming out of some kind of a flu or cold. Call it whatever you want to call it.
Oh yes. I was attending the music show in LA called NAMM.
Yep.
And when you have been there for a couple of days, you leave with something called NAMM tracks.
Yeah, the famous
Everybody gets sick.
NAM virus.
Yes. but as you said, we also had last week when we were about to record, we did some sessions instead. So more about that later, maybe.
Yes, that's wonderful.
So what are we talking about today?
We were thinking that we were supposed to do a somewhat of a mini series of in 4 parts. We are often talking about the 4 main steps of managing ideas and suggestions and improvements, which we're often talking about: collect, manage, prioritize, and decide as the 4 main parts or steps of managing ideas in an effective way. And this is the first of those 4 parts. So we're going to be focusing on the collect part today and hopefully share as much best practices and tips as we can on how to manage that part as good as possible.
Yes. And as you mentioned, the 4 pillars is also the 4 pillars in our tool Hives, where you can do all 4 of them.
Definitely.
But starting with the collection part, we've been saying this many times before, but it all starts with your decision on what you need based on a real need, hopefully. And you can also divide the collection into 3 phases in a way. The phase itself can be 3 phases before, during, and after the collection, sort of.
Yeah.
So let's start a little bit with before the collection.
Yes.
So what do you need to do before the collection?
So I think that one of the most important factors before the collection is, of course, agreeing with the team that are, let's say, collecting the ideas or solutions or improvements that they want to find, is agreeing upon what they want to solve, and in some kind of way define what kind of challenge or opportunity they're supposed to be capturing ideas or solutions for.
Absolutely. And one thing that we always suggest as well is to, if it's possible, to cut it up in small pieces, because you can't eat an elephant if you don't cut it up in pieces. Sounds
Exactly
horrible, but that's just a fact. So take the challenge or the need you have, or the wishful outcome, and try to see if you can cut it down in smaller pieces, and also make sure that each of these pieces have the right audience, because sometimes we're all for involving a lot of different perspectives on people, but it's no use of involving people that are totally wrong always. Sometimes it's really good to stir up the group a little bit. But if you cut it up in pieces, it's much easier to write the questions you need to ask as well. And those questions will be very, very important for your result. But so try to divide it into pieces. And we do that by using the value proposition canvas. The right part of it is like, what is the pains and gains today? And what do we need to do to make these pains and gains disappear, basically? And that will give us a fair amount of actions to take. And each of these actions are corresponding to the main challenge, of course, but they can have they can affect HR, for example, even if it's a product, and if it's an HR idea, it can also affect products, vice versa. So I think that's the first thing to do before you actually start the collection. So make sure you get what you need, see if you can, chop it up in smaller pieces, make sure that you have the right audience for each of these pieces.
Yes, definitely. About having somewhat of a direction, one thing that we often talk about, I know that we've been talking about it in earlier episodes as well, but it needs to be mentioned and repeated again. It's the fact that the more specific you can be, the better the engagement will usually be as well. Because a pretty usual misconception that I face is that many organizations or people going for capturing ideas or solutions or improvement thinks that the broader they ask, the more engagement they'll get. And let's say that they just go out in the organization and say, what are your best ideas or what are your best suggestions about pretty much anything? But the thing is that it might sound counterintuitive, but the truth is that the more vague or the more broad this is, the more irrelevant and the worse the engagement will get, because it causes confusion.
Absolutely.
Usually.
Absolutely. But also just before that, I mean, there's no right or wrong here either, because sometimes if you don't even know the challenge, it could be nice to ask a vague question to a lot of people. But then also you have to be prepared on that you need to handle a lot of different aspects of things, and you get everything from, we need better coffee in the cafeteria to, this machine's screw needs to be changed because it's flat or something like that,
Definitely. And another side effect of it is also that what we want to achieve here, and we're going to be going into that in a few minutes as well, the different kind of perspectives that we want to engage, as many different perspectives as possible in a collection, is that when you're not specific, when you are pretty vague or broad in the questions and are creating somewhat of a confusion, a pretty common side effect of that is that the people who usually have the loudest voices or make themselves heard are the ones that makes themselves heard in this case as well. While a lot of, let's say, introvert or people that maybe not are making their voice loud in the organization feels like they're holding back a little bit because of the confusion and vagueness.
You have to create some kind of psychology safety, psychological safety. That's really important, but that's more of during, I would say, as well. Staying a little bit in the before the collection, I think it's definitely crucial to determine how will we present this when we're done with it and to whom. So let's say that an idea that you come up with, or a solution, or a suggestion of improvements needs some kind of money attached to it. Like, how much will this cost? Or is this illegal? Is there any legal aspects on this? You kind of have to have those people in the audience for the collection you're doing. Otherwise, you will kind of miss out on that information, and so the decision maker cannot make a proper decision.
Exactly. And a thing about the being specific or being relevant in the challenge or opportunity, we've been talking about that before, or mentioning it a few times before as well. But we often talk about the "how might we" statement as well to be
that's brilliant,
as relevant as possible when you're asking questions. And I think that can't be like repeated enough times, because it's so useful for all kinds of organization in my opinion. And the thing about that is that before you even start collecting, is that you try to like conclude what we were talking about before, the challenge or the opportunity that you want to solve for, or that you want to collect ideas or solutions for. And the thing is that I haven't met one single organization so far that doesn't have a list of challenges that they need to solve.
Yeah.
Most do already. And that could be anything from that they need to improve efficiency in some certain process, or they need to come up with a new business model, or it could be high and low and small and big. But I would say that the best and most effective way of coming up with a how might we statement or a specific or relevant challenge to capture ideas and solutions for is to look inside and see what kind of challenge are you talking about today, either in the management team or in the organization, and try to pretty much like rank or prioritize those and decide which 1, 2, or 3 or 4 of these are most important to find solutions for.
Exactly.
Today.
And just an example of that, let's say that you get an idea or you ask, how can we be more productive? And someone says, the office is too loud, I can't really work. And to transform a question like that from like the office is too loud to get work done, basically, that is the kind of statement. And if you write that in a how might we statement, it may sound like how might we reduce noise in the office for those who need quiet. And that's way more, you will get way more productive answers to that than the previous way of answering or stating the question.
Yeah, and you won't get just like random ideas. You will get ideas that can solve the specific challenge that you need to solve.
Exactly.
So that's a really useful one. You can definitely just, if you just pretty much like Google how might we statement or how might we challenge, you'll find a lot of great guides or formulas on how to use that in the best way when you describe a challenge or a question. Definitely.
Another thing that is kind of bridging from the first phase, sort of before to during, is when we have our questions, we have our how might we statement or questions, we have the target audience now, and we know what we need when we're done. Now we need to figure out, before we actually start the collection as well, how we ask the questions, in which format and how we need the answers. So, for example, we really like to get answers by scoring. And if you can turn an open question into a scoring question, we strongly recommend that. And because that gives you better data, but also it really helps the contributors, or the target audience in this case, to give the information we need in a structured format and quickly.
That makes it comparable as well. And
you will not get any, we need more coffee in the cafeteria. Please answer this, score this idea, or score this, or give us this data based on this. So I think that's a really, really good way of doing it as well. Not for everything, of course, but that's why I'm saying it. You need to know, okay, this is what we need to know. How can we translate this to a format where we can easily capture this for any person in the audience?
And I think that can almost like sound a little bit more difficult than it really is to do that as well, because I think that most of you who listen can if you would just like put 10 ideas in front of you and try to think about them and see like what kind of information would I need as a leader or a manager in order to prioritize or qualify which of these ones I should spend more time or energy or money on. You could fairly quickly, I would say in most cases, decide on, all right, so usually I need answers on these 2 or 3 questions or information about that. And if you just try to like translate those things, if you can, into numbers or scales, let's say from 1 to 10 on 2 or 3 questions, that's going to make your both the engagement and your work as a manager completely way more effective and easier to spend time on the right things.
Absolutely. So let's jump into the during phase.
Yeah.
To capture data from people, you can do in multiple ways. You can do surveys, you can do workshops, you can do meetings, you can do by email, or you can preferably use Hives where you can do all 3 of these things. But what is the most important things to think of when you are, during the collection sort of?
The wide range of perspectives, definitely, I would say, because when it comes to managing or having a collection or collecting ideas, one of the most misunderstood concepts is that the best ideas often comes from the experts. And we've both you and me are often talking about that during like workshops or lectures or trainings, that we have even science and studies on the fact that breakthrough ideas does not come from homogeneous groups where everyone thinks the same things. So during a collection, the wide range of perspectives is definitely, in my opinion, the most important factor in collecting the right stuff.
I agree with you, but somehow we already determined who should be in the sessions before, but during as well, as you said, it's really important with these different perspectives. So I would say you're 100% right, but I will also say you have to have a method of making all the perspective heard. I think that's even more important.
Yeah, sure.
Because just bringing people into the room will not help you at all.
No.
And also, if there is you have to have representation, I would say. If you might need to anchor this idea into the organization, or maybe it's a product and you need to have the consumer in the room. Or at least you can do as Jeff Bezos does, have an empty chair representing that the customer is not in the room, just so everybody's aware of that. And I think that's brilliant as well. But
I think that's a very visual way of making sure that everyone thinks about the receiver of the solution in the end.
Yeah, but that person should be there. That's even better. You know?
It is. Definitely. And another thing that I don't think that you should underestimate, and I know that a lot of our customers are using that as their superpower, is transparency. The fact that ideas are shared transparently between people as well. So you don't just put up a regular survey or SharePoint form and send things to an Excel sheet or an inbox, but rather collecting stuff in a transparent way, which makes it possible for people to build or think about each other's ideas, which also can have the advantage of creating new ideas, because something you posted made me think of something else that could create a new idea or a new.
Absolutely. And also you have to make sure that the technology is accepted by the audience, if I may say so, or they can live up to it, because we have customers or clients that everyone in the staff doesn't have an email address. So that means that you can't invite them by email, for example, and you can't take for granted that everybody has a phone, even if almost everybody in the West world at least have a phone. But so you need to make sure that you collect the data you need, and that you're also attracting the audience. Even if you invite them to participate, doesn't mean that they automatically are engaging. And one example of that is you have to find your way. It's like Pixar, when they are trying out a new movie on the sketch in the sketch phase, sort of, they kind of print out 100 pictures to describe the story. And if they can't describe the story in 100 pictures at first, that means that the movie is bad. So they keep redoing it so they can describe it in 100 pictures. But then they put these 100 pictures outside the restrooms in the big Pixar facility. So everybody needs to go to the bathroom. That's the golden rule, right? So when you pass this, you'll see it, and they let people interact with the images, the posters on the wall to write comments and stuff like that. So that's their way of collecting data. But because could you imagine how to achieve this digitally? That could be really tough, because you have to get everybody's attention, and people need to look at 100 pictures and stuff like that. So I think make sure that you have a method that suits your target audience when you collect data.
That's a nice exercise to really push and try if people understand it or not.
Yeah. And prototyping is great. I mean, you create a super simple user journey, for example. That's perfect prototype to get people's thoughts on. If that's what you need. Once again, depends on what you need in the end. But make sure that the right people are involved, and you involve them with the technology so they can engage, and make sure that they are aware of the progress, because that creates engagement.
Right.
Should we jump into after the collection?
Yes, let's do it.
So after the collection, what is important to you after the collection? Now you have all the data in the system, or on paper, or on the wall.
I think that one of the things is, of course, and not being silent, so to speak. I think that one of the first things that everyone needs to keep in mind is that most people don't have a problem with getting a no. They have a problem with dead silence when they have engaged. So just have somewhat of a plan of how you communicate. You can actually communicate that before as well, that we want everyone's perspective. We will not have the time to answer everyone, but we will take everything into consideration and or something like that. Just that you are transparent and open and communicate of what's going to happen after they have submitted or after you collected. But another thing is, of course, the process and the structure, that you have a way of choosing and qualifying ideas.
Exactly, yeah. So I would say that the most common mistakes is that you are treating your collection, or whatever, it's a meeting. Usually it's a meeting we're talking about, right? Or a workshop, or an email address, or whatever. The most common mistakes is that you treat it like a single diamond. You have something you need to answer, you get answer on or data on, and you collect a lot of ideas, and then you narrow it down into a folder on your computer or in your desk. But please add another diamond to it. Make it a double diamond.
Yep.
Because now when you have the results, you kind of need to, as you said, look into it, prioritize it, evolve it as such. I was almost saying maybe. I mean, you need to get perspective on the ideas as well when you have the ideas. So let's say you get 10 ideas, you take 3 of them, you put them together into a really great idea, and you need to get perspective on that. You need people to score them or vote on them or something like that. So that's why I think you should always have like a 2-step, phase, or the double diamond is a perfect one to look into. That you take your first collection, and then you continue working with it, and then you kind of get the final results. Or maybe you need to do a triple diamond or quadruple diamond. It depends on the ideas, but never settle on the first diamond.
And I also think that you shouldn't be too afraid of using let's say the crowd or the audience in general as well, at least not in the early stages, I would say, because in those stages it could be very valuable to again invite all the people to, let's say, vote or score ideas in a very early stage. But then I would definitely say that when it comes to like when you're getting through the first couple of stages or phases, it's definitely more a matter of experts that should be.
Absolutely. And I think I said this examples before, but let's say I'm a truck driver and I have an idea of, it's really hard for me to find the goods in the warehouse. So my idea is to, put IoT on each of the pallets so I can find them, That's my idea because I heard about this technology and this. It's a great idea, but then when you test that idea, you shouldn't test it on the truck driver first. You should test it on technology people that say, yeah, this is doable. This will cost this much. This will take this long. And then when they have the idea and the concept and proof of concept, or proof of tech, and the packaging of the, this is how it will work. Then they need to check with the truck drivers again because they are the users. So,
yeah, exactly.
So that's it's like a circle of life here when you try ideas. So make sure that you have the right audience for the data you need to collect. Yeah,
and that's a great example also about the fact that it's not linear in any kind of way. These kind of working processes, you need a way to go forth and back and involve different audiences and groups.
Because then when you have this IoT app and you want all the truck drivers to download that app, and you find they can't because they don't have a Wi-Fi or something like that, then you need to look into that and so on, and that's another collection, and then it never ends.
Great.
But shall we summarize a little bit? So
definitely.
In the collect phase, before, what are you doing before? What is the data you need, and what is the challenge? Don't be afraid to break up the challenge in small challenges that have different target audiences. Make sure you have representatives from different perspectives. Make it easy for each representative to engage. Make their engagement transparent so people can see and build on other people's ideas, and also give feedback where in the process are the idea. Even if it's it's still is good information for the person who gave it. Afterwards, make sure that you are not doing a single diamond, do a double diamond, keep working on it, and make sure, once again, it's almost like in the pre-phase, or the after phase is as important, but make sure that you absolutely get all the data you need in a format that the decision makers are used to making decision within.
Wonderful, spot on.
And use scoring.
Exactly, great. So that was the first part of the 4 pillars: collect, manage, prioritize, and decide. Parts of managing ideas and suggestions in an effective and results-driven way. Stay tuned for the second part.
Yes.
I've always wanted to say stay tuned. I've never said that. Stay tuned for the second part.
Stay tuned.
Wonderful. I hope to hear from you as well. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts. But with that said, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this episode of the Honeypot Podcast. See you soon again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Honeypot Podcast, brought to you by Hives.co. We hope you found today's insights valuable and inspiring. If you have any questions, thoughts, or ideas, we'd love to hear from you. You can easily reach us by searching for Alexander Wennerberg or Fredrik Heghammar on LinkedIn. Or feel free to drop us an email at alexander@hives.co or fredrik@hives.co. And hey, if you want to learn more about how Hives.co can help you capture insights, ideas, and feedback from your team or customers to make smarter business decisions, head over to Hives.co. It's the easiest yet most powerful tool out there for driving innovation and continuous improvement. Until next time, keep innovating, and thanks for being a part of the Honeypot community.